Breaking news here on Morning Joe. President Biden laying out his terms for participating in the presidential debates this fall.
And the breaking news is they're not going to go the commission route. Donald Trump has already said in the past he's not going to go the commission route. Trump has said he'd debate Biden anytime, any place. It looks like Joe Biden has taken him up on that. Let's see what the president's saying.
Donald Trump lost 2 debates to me in 2020. Since then, he hadn't shown up for debate. Now he's acting like he wants to debate me again. Well, make my day, pal. I'll even do it twice. So let's pick the dates, Donald. I hear you're free on Wednesdays.
Oh, wow.
Oh, my God.
Wow. That's been subtle about that round.
Yeah. That was straight down the middle.
For anyone who doesn't know, that's when the court is in recess.
Right, yeah, exactly.
Just to make sure.
So, Jonathan, walk us through this. So they've said no to the Presidential Debate Commission, which is something that Donald Trump had said in the past he was going to say no to.
Correct.
Trump has said he'd debate him anytime, any place. Biden's now said, we're not going by those rules anymore. We'll debate you 2 times.
June and September are the months that the Biden campaign is putting forth. They'll have to come to agreement on the actual dates. You're right. We should remember that both in 2016 and 2020, Trump and his campaign savaged the debate commission. They basically said, we're not going to do that this time around. We should also underscore Donald Trump refused to participate in any Republican primary debates. He would not be part of that. He is now taken to Truth Social and in his media appearances saying, I'll debate Joe Biden whenever he wants. This is the Biden campaign saying, look, we are going to debate. I was talking to senior advisors the last couple of days. There was never a suggestion they were going to duck the debates, but now they're trying to come up with terms. Looks like June and September ahead of early voting in some states.
And John Hyland, they've also said, we're not going to do debates after early voting's already begun, first of all. But secondly, they said to the Presidential Commission, one of the reasons they're not doing it is you don't play by the rules. You let this guy come with COVID because you were afraid to test him and his family? Like, that's an absolute joke. And also, we saw how Donald Trump, crowded Hillary, moved around. They're like, let's have a real debate. No audience. You and me.
Even in the context of the Commission on Presidential Debates historically, the debate about debates. What are the terms to the debates? Who the moderator is going to be? What are the topics? How it's going to get? These are always big debates in every presidential year. The debate about debates goes on. The negotiations go on between the sides for months. Eventually, someone threatens to pull out. Eventually, you end up with some rules that everyone abides by. As you said, Joe, I think the process in 2020 could not have been more broken. If you think about what happened in that fall, in that context, with the stakes that high. Now you've seen Donald Trump in the way that he's handled the Republican debates or not handled them, demonstrating that he has no respect for this process. He's just trying to advance his own interests. Now both sides do that, but this is a way for them to say, look, we are ready to debate.
They're calling the bluff.
We are ready to debate. We're ready to debate soon. We're ready to debate in June. June is not far away. That's next month if I've got my calendar right. And I think there will still be now a big set of questions.
That's exciting.
Who's going to moderate the debates?
Right.
Are these debates going to take place? What will be the duration of the debates? What will be the topics of the debates? Who will moderate them? I understand. I believe it's the case that they are saying that there will be no audiences at these debates.
No audiences.
They're going to step outside. They're not going to have screaming. They're going to try to have a serious substantive debate. Now, it's hard to do that with Donald Trump, but they're trying to seize control of the agenda here for a very important set of concerns, as you said, before early voting starts.
What they're trying to do, Meek, is have a real debate.
Yeah, and Mike Barnicle, I'm still stuck on, I hear you're free on Wednesdays. Wow. Your thoughts?
The best part of this announcement that was just made is that announcement of the President of the United States. Brief, punchy, clearly understandable, basically saying, let's go, tough guy. I think that's what a lot of people are looking for from Joseph Biden.
They just got it.
John, so let's remember, going back to 2020, Donald Trump pulled out of the second of 3 debates because it was going to be held virtually. It was in the middle of COVID. Then that got us into the town halls where Savannah did such a great job with Donald Trump. The whole process was a bit of a mess. Yes, it was during COVID, but it was a mess. The question now will be, has Joe Biden called the bluff of Donald Trump, who said anytime, any place? Joe Biden said, okay, here are the times and the places. Let's do it. We'll see what Donald Trump says.
I have been refreshing the Truth Social feed. Trump has not yet responded, but there have been doubts throughout this process whether each man would want to debate, right? You know, we hear the Republicans say, no, Joe Biden won't want to do it. Some Democrats have wondered if Donald Trump will do it. Both men now have publicly committed to it. Now, Trump has backed out of such things before. We'll see if he'll follow through. June and September. We also should note that the Biden team is proposing a vice presidential debate in July. So there'd be one, it'd be between the Republican convention mid-July in Milwaukee and the Democrats at the end of August in Chicago. So there'd be a total of 3, 2 presidential, 1 VP.
You know, and of course, Donald Trump, it's going to be fascinating to see what happens because he talks tough, of course, and then he always backs out. I'm going to do this in 2 weeks, backs out. I'm going to do this in 3 weeks, backs out. He backed out of every debate, refused to debate Republicans, refused to debate Nikki Haley. So I wonder whether his people who understand the less people hear of Trump, the better the campaign does. I wonder if he's going to find an excuse to back out of these debates, too.
I think he will definitely try to. I mean, the reality is, you know, to use, I come from Brownsville, Brooklyn. Donald Trump is a political punk. He does not want to go on stage without a cheering squad, without all of the things that he needs to make him feel all charged up. To go one-on-one.
And you know this because you grew up around a reform with James Brown.
Right.
When you say something stupid and there's dead silence, it lands with a thud. And Donald Trump speaks so much nonsense, there will be no crowd.
There's no crowd
cheer and hoot and holler and laugh. And those stupid words will just hang in the air for minutes.
And look stupid. And he needs all of that to do the Donald Trump Act. To have to stand there and really deal with serious policies and answer serious questions with no way of trying to deviate and distract. He is not going to agree to this. He can look at the feed all he wants. Donald Trump will try any way he can not to have to deal with one-on-one with a real blue-collar guy who was not raised as an elitist like Donald Trump was, that needs props to try to get through.
If you're just tuning in on the West Coast,
we should play it.
We'll say it again. Joe Biden has said he will debate Donald Trump in June, vice presidential debate in July, the second debate in September, said no to the presidential commission because there's still rankle, of course, about the fact that the commission couldn't enforce the rules against Donald Trump 4 years ago. They allowed him to go on stage with COVID. We're too scared to test him. Constant interruptions. Trump canceled the second debate. We could go on and on and on. But